Well, it's my job tonight to crack the door to creation open for you, and it's going to be your job to kick it down. We're going to lay a foundation for you to build upon. We're going to give you explain the battle of the worldviews, give you some critical thinking questions, talk about the origin of life, the origin of matter, and then talk about the censorship that's happening. And we need everybody in this fight. We have these posters, flyers everywhere on campus, and it says, enjoy the freedom to think outside the intolerant dogma of materialism. It's not very tolerant. St. Cloud State, their calling card is they're diverse and inclusive, but I'm finding out that they're not as inclusive as they claim to be in the creation, in the science room. And that goes in the face of what Thomas Chamberlain said over 100 years ago. He said that he warned researchers not to let one hypothesis dominate their thinking. Instead, they should always have or seek multiple working hypotheses. So then people can sharpen their analytical skills. They can compare and contrast. They can think independently. And if people don't do that, if there's just one dominant hypothesis, then people just memorize and conform, which is really sad. And that's what I see all over the place on campuses. There's a lot excluded. It's like this one. Don't be absurd. Nobody made us. We evolved by chance from snowflakes. Isn't that crazy? But that's all they're allowed to think. It's from snowflakes. So now it's time for us to start raising our hands and asking questions. How do you know that? How do you know we evolved from snowflakes? How do you know we evolved from non-life? How do you know that? How do you know we weren't created or intelligently designed? Has it ever been observed that we evolved from nothing? Have we ever observed people evolving from other animals? And are you making any assumptions? And the biggest assumption our government education is making is that there's no God. And once you do that, you paint yourself into a corner, and now you have to believe that laws of physics don't apply, that matter comes from nowhere, violating the first law of thermodynamics, and that life comes from non-life, violating the law of biogenesis, and that all the people and animals and plants that have ever lived came from a single life source, violating the law of genetics. And so, yeah, we got to keep asking those questions, and we have to define the terms too. What do you mean by evolution? You know, evolution is a slippery word. They like to equivocate. They'll say, hey kids, evolution means change over time. See how these animals are changing, big dogs, little dogs, are they changing to adapt to the environment? It's like, yeah, I agree with that. That's adaptation within a kind, variation within a kind. And then they'll say on the next page, say, okay, so you believe that evolution, now you believe man came from apes, ape-like ancestors. And that came from a single life source. So when I say evolution, a lot of times I'll say molecules to man evolution. I'll say fish to fisherman evolution, or bacteria to blue whale evolution. And basically, for the young ones listening, just think of evolution as man's attempt to explain life without God. And they'll say, well, science, we believe in science. And I'll say, well, what do you mean it by science? And typically I get them to where we'll go along with the scientific method. It's observable, testable, repeatable, falsifiable. And I'll just point out, hey, evolution's none of that. We don't observe it, we can't test it. And every time you falsify it, they change the theory to adapt for it. When I was growing up, I had heard about the Big Bang and the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve and ape-like ancestors and Noah's Ark and dinosaurs. And it didn't make any sense to me. It was very confusing. It was all foggy and blurry, and it just didn't make any sense. And then my cousin Carol, bless her heart, in 2004, she sent me a copy of this video called The Age of the Earth. And it changed my life, my family's life. We sat down and we watched it, and everything snapped into focus. The fog was blowing away, and we could see clearly. And we realized, hey, we're not putting one puzzle together here. We're putting two puzzles together. The key is to separate the pieces, and they fit together perfectly. The key, well, how do you separate them? Well, some are based on man's imagination, and some are based on God's word. But some people, they'll say, well, couldn't God use evolution to make the world? God could have. I mean, God can do anything. But what God can't do is lie. So if he said he did it in 6 days, he did it in 6 days.
Amen.
This isn't a matter of what God could have done. It's a matter of what God said he did.
That's right.
The real question is, are you going to believe what God said? And they'll say, well, you can't take Genesis literally. God's communicating to an ignorant people. They're not sophisticated enough to understand evolution. So it's just a framework. It's an analogy. It's just figurative language. And it's like, really? I was on a radio talk show one time, and a guy called in and said, does the Bible say that man came from the dust of the earth? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, that's evolution. That's what evolution says. Man came from the dust of the earth. And that's just how God did it. It's an analogy. And I said, well, the Bible also says that the first woman came from the first man's rib. How does that fit into the analogy? And it doesn't. It doesn't at all. And keep in mind that Jesus always referred to Genesis as an accurate historical event.
Right.
He always did. And so if we're not referring to Genesis as an accurate historical event, we're not following the example of Jesus. And we're on real thin ice. Because if we're starting to compromise creation, that's a slippery slope. Well, if God didn't mean what he said about creation, maybe he didn't mean what he said about marriage. Maybe he didn't mean what he said about gender. Maybe he didn't mean what he said about the gospel. Maybe he didn't mean anything. I'll just live my life. And if people get to that point, why believe in a Savior? You don't believe in God. And so if you cause one of these little ones to stumble, man, it's better for you if you were cast in the sea with the millstones thrown around your neck. So this is a very important topic. Genesis is where the foundation for the gospel is. It tells us where sin came from. It tells us where everything came from. You know, the stars, the planets, people, plants, animals, why we wear clothes. You know, it's everything. And Paul refers to it as an accurate event. You know, in Romans chapter 5 and 1 Corinthians 15. If it's not an accurate Adam and Eve in a literal fall, boy, that really weakens his testimony. Okay, but we'll throw out, if you don't want to use Genesis, you don't want to use that at all, okay, we won't use Genesis. How about Exodus? Can we use that as an accurate historical event? Did those things actually happen? And maybe more specifically, the Ten Commandments. Can we take that literally? Or is that a framework, an analogy? You know, is that a figurative language that we can twist around to make God say whatever we want him to say? You know, most people believe that the Ten Commandments should be taken literally. You know, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal. There's no wiggle room there. Well, right smack dab in the middle of the Ten Commandments, in Exodus 20:11, it says, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is. That's 6 days. And he rested the seventh day and hallowed it. So that's 6 days. And I was on a radio talk show out of Valley Forge one time, and the co-host said, well, couldn't each one of those days be millions of years? And I said, well, what verse in the Bible causes you to think that? He's not getting that idea from God's holy word. He's getting that idea from man's corrupted word. You know, there's a verse in there where a day is like 1,000 years and 1,000 years like a day. Yeah, I get it. But that's not millions. And besides, it doesn't make sense. If God made the plants on day 3, are they going to live millions of years without the sun on day 4? And even if they could they live millions of more years without the birds and the bees to pollinate them? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I was talking to this woman one time, and she said, she found out I gave these creation evolution talks, and she goes, really, what side are you on? And I said, creation, how about you? And she said, well, can I say both? The simple, short answer to that is no. No, you can't say both. It's like, well, why not? Because it's illogical. It breaks the law of non-contradiction. Two opposing things can't be true at the same time in the same way. Right. This podium can't be in this room and out of this room at the same time in the same way. And I could show you probably 20 different examples of where the order's backwards. The Bible has the earth before the sun. Evolution has the sun before the earth. And it just goes on and on. And they do their mental gymnastic to try explain it away, but I've never seen anybody explain away the whale. The Bible says the whale made on day 5 came before the land animals on day 6. Evolution clearly says that life started in the sea, came on the land, and then evolved back in the sea to make the whale. So question, can you believe that the whale came before land animals and after land animals? No, it's illogical. Basically, pick a lane and get in it. And then Jesus said, if I have told you earthly things and you believe not, how shall you believe if I tell you of heavenly things? And let's look at the 2 timelines. You know, people ask me, well, how old do you think the earth is? And I say, I just agree with Jesus. I say, what do you mean? Okay, the biblical timeline is roughly 6,000 years ago, God made everything, and it was very good. And there was a fall, and there was wickedness, and God judged it with a flood 4,400 years ago. Jesus came to set that situation right 2,000 years ago, roughly. And here we are today, and Jesus is coming again. Evolutionist timeline is 13.8 billion years ago. There was a big bang where nothing exploded. It was Brian Young. He was speaking at Wayne State University, and a professor comes up to him and it's like, You're taking your faith and your religion and you're passing it off as science and you're confusing the kids. And Brian Young says, sir, can I ask you a question? He says, yeah. He says, where'd the singularity, the thing, the cosmic egg, the matter for the Big Bang, where'd that come from? And he goes, we don't know yet. Science has no explanation. Oh, science has no explanation where that came from? No, not yet. He says, oh, so tell me, sir, correct me if I'm wrong, but you believe in that by faith. And the professor didn't like to hear that, but it's true. We both have positions of faith. Faith about the past and how we got there. Neither one of them can be proven. Okay, so that's 13.8 billion years ago. 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth forms. 3.5, first life, single living cell. And then 600 million years ago, that's the geologic column. That's where all the plants and animals and people evolved. All right, and then people got on the scene about 1 or 2 million years ago. So on these two timelines, people got on the scene from the Bible right at the beginning, right? And from evolution, it's right at the end, right? Okay, well, what does Jesus say? He says in Mark 10:6, but from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female. Which timeline is he validating? The biblical one. So anyone who's an old earther, what do you do with this verse? You're basically calling Jesus a liar. And then that verse goes on, and he's quoting, by the way, from Genesis 1 and 2, validating them both as an accurate historical event. For this cause shall man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh, so that they are no more twain but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Okay, so Jesus is stamping Genesis as an accurate historical event. And there was one guy I saw on the internet, he said, well, I know more than Jesus. I could not, I almost fell out of my chair when I heard that. The arrogance of man. So just keep in mind, we've got the same data. We got the same information, the same facts. You know, we got the same tree rings, the same ice cores, the same radiometric dating, the same fossils, the same layers of rock, the same starlight. You know, the creationists and the evolutionists, it's all the same. Well, if we have all the same data, why do we disagree? It's because our belief systems are different. We have belief systems, different beliefs about the past, about where we came from, and about where we're going. And tonight we're going to take a look at the past. You know, this isn't science versus religion. No, this is science built on one view of history that acknowledges God versus science built on another view of history that doesn't acknowledge God. Has anybody been to the Creation Museum? When that first opened, Eugenie Scott was going to, she's interviewing Ken Ham. And so you got a battle of worldviews right there. And Eugenie Scott says, so you admit it then, you start with the Bible. And Ken says, yeah, that's true. And you're not prepared to change anything in the Bible, are you? He says, no. You're not prepared to change anything in Genesis, are you? No. See, that's religion. Your views are stuck. I'm a scientist. We start with the evidence and develop our theories, and when new evidence comes along, we're prepared to change our theories. That's real science. Your views are set, mine are not. What would you say to somebody like that? I love what Ken Ham says. He says, Dr. Scott. She says, yeah. Can I ask you a question? She says, yeah. Tell me, you say that you're an atheist, is that right? Yeah, that's right. You don't believe in God, right? No, no God. And you don't believe the Bible's true. No, the Bible's not true. And you don't believe the account of creation in Genesis. No. And Ken says, so, are you prepared to change any of that? See, they both are committed to their worldview. She's just as committed to atheism as Ken's committed to the Bible. And so what we need to do when we want to separate, how to figure out which battle, which side to come down on, let's start asking some critical questions for the Bible. You know, how do you know that? Well, God revealed it in His Word, in the Bible. Why do you believe the Bible? Well, the Bible's been prophetic. Man can't write prophetic events and have them come true specifically. That's in the Bible. So it wasn't written by man, it was written by God. You know, has this ever been observed? Well, no, I believe it by faith. You know, I believe that. What assumptions are you making? Well, I'm assuming that God tells the truth and that He can preserve His Word. That's where I stand. How about an evolutionist? Yeah, how do you know that we came from pond scum? They don't. Has it ever been observed? No. Are you making any assumptions? Yes. The huge assumption is there's no God. There's no God. So right there, they have to start believing that laws of physics don't work. And so their assumptions are, there's no God. All the plants, animals, and people came from a single living cell. Wow. Life from non-life. Wow. And matter from nothing. Wow. And they say, I have blind faith. wow, it's a lot more easy to believe, it's a lot easier to believe that God created this the supernatural God made this natural universe than it is to believe that hydrogen and helium turn into people. I mean, that's a lot of faith. They base a lot of what they believe on the geologic column. The geologic column is the Bible for the evolutionist. They're not going to change those dates at all. I get a dinosaur talk where it shows clearly that dinosaurs lived with people and that they found soft tissue and dinosaur blood in dinosaur bones, which it can't last millions of years. But they won't change that. Age of the dinosaurs. They will not do it. And so that's the New Testament for the evolutionists. The Old Testament is the Big Bang. And they're changing that. The Big Bang that they say have it all figured out right now, it's totally different than the Big Bang of 40 years ago. Because they've had to add string theory and dark matter and dark energy. And 40 years ago, they said they had it all figured out too. So let's just see, this geologic column, those layers in the dirt, does it really take millions of years for them to get laid down? Well, thank God for Mount St. Helens. May 18th, 1980, the Mount St. Helens blew up. I just love watching a mountain blow up. And this is the layers of sediment that were laid down. You see there's 3 distinct layers there. The bottom layer was made down on the day of the eruption. Okay? That middle layer was laid down in June of that year, and the top layer was laid down 2 years later. So it didn't take millions of years for those layers to get laid down. And they're laid down laminated, just like the other ones. And as far as the geologic column goes, let's compare it to the Grand Canyon. Did you know Grand Canyon's missing 7 of the 12 layers of geologic column? I do a talk on Grand Canyon. You know, the top ones, they say, oh, those just eroded away. But what about the bottom 2, those bottom 2 middle ones? 72 million years. And I think there's even some of each layer where you get up to 100 million years. How was there no erosion? How was there no sediment built up? The Grand Canyon, that's an open door to an evolutionist because they know that their theories can't explain it. But there's one of our theories that does. It's called the hydroplate theory. And I go do a talk on that if you go into Noah, what caused the flood. Another question for evolutionists is, hey, where all this dirt come from? You know, there's a lot of dirt there, a lot of sedimentary rock. Where did that come from? So they have to just keep on asking that. Where did it come from? You know, it come from nowhere. Well, yeah, they believe that nothing exploded. In the beginning, there was nothing, and it exploded and made everything. It's just amazing. It's like, are we supposed to believe that this church came together by an explosion at a brick factory, next to an explosion at a lumber company, next to an explosion at a carpet company, and a light bulb country, and a paint company? Explosions don't organize anything. And so we have this on campus. Once upon a time, nothing exploded and turned into people. And I gave a talk on that. Are you being brainwashed? You know, you need to see both sides of an issue. And we go into different areas of society. And then another thing to ask, too, is where did you come from? You know, did we come from a single living cell 3.5 billion years ago? Is that how life came? And so what is this? One living cell plus time equals what? Scientifically, that's people, folks. See, we started out as an amoeba, we turned into a frog, and then as grandpa, and then we turned into a prince. You know, if this happened quickly, we'd call it a fairy tale. If a frog turns into a prince quickly, well, that's a fairy tale. Put that in the fiction section. But if a frog turns into a prince slowly, hey, now we're talking. Modern science. Put it in the textbook. When you're talking to an evolutionist, I always ask them, how did life begin? They can't answer it. They think they have it all figured out. It's in the textbooks. Well, let's take a look at their textbooks. This is a 10th grade biology textbook that they use in St. Cloud. Okay, now this is when we got to talk about fuzzy words, like could have or might have or possibly. They're trying to get an idea across, but they don't have the facts to support it. So let's take a look, and so we'll circle the fuzzy words. All right? Although lacking direct evidence of the first cells, science can make some inferences. First, many scientists think that little or no oxygen gas existed on early Earth. Second, the oldest fossils are thought to be cells the size and shape of some living prokaryotes. Finally, the first cells might have developed in an environment filled with organic molecules for food. Thus, the first cells were probably a bunch of big words. See all the fuzzy words there? Whenever you see a sentence with a fuzzy word, just cross it out. There's no evidence for that. No evidence for that. No evidence for that. That's not science. That's not scientific. What's the evidence for the first living cell? Zippity-doo-dah, folks. Cross that whole chapter out. Okay, then, but it doesn't change. You go into college. This is what they use at St. Cloud State. It's a general ed textbook. And these are the fuzzy words that are in that one in 13 pages. As best as we can surmise, the story of origins apparently arose. Some scientists speculate. Yeah, well, other scientists speculate in a creator. That's what I would say. Probably originated, probably diverged, and how about this one? Our best guess. Isn't that something? And yet people, evolutionists think they got it all figured out. It's just like, hey, why didn't you make $1 million then? Because in 2007, there was the Origin of Life project. You could have made $1 million if you could have proven how DNA formed naturally. Nobody could do it. Took the money off the table, but now, hey, evolution 2.0. Now you can make $10 million if you're the first person to self-organize chemicals into code. Have at it, folks. Good luck. And so it's just crazy. Yeah, that money, yeah. So understand they don't know how life began. Doesn't matter what they put in the textbooks, they don't know. It's a huge weakness for evolution. Okay, let's say you were walking across the beach and you saw this Sandman. How many people would think, boy, I wonder how many millions of years it took for wave and winds and the stuff to put that together? No, or maybe look at, boy, the seagulls, the turtles, they're getting pretty talented. No, nobody would think that. You would think that was obviously designed by an intelligence. And how about this? Oh, now we're at a whole new level. Now we got information, which requires a code and a language and a medium and a sender and a receiver. That's way beyond evolution. See, the Big Bang says, in the beginning, there was matter and energy. Question, where did the non-material stuff come from? Like ideas and spirit. And so in this picture, do you think that the hotels evolved by chance and random processes? No, that'd be absurd. Do you think the umbrellas did? No, that'd be absurd. How about the clothes on my son? How many millions of years do you think it would take for a t-shirt to evolve? That'd be absurd. They'd put you in the loony bin if you believe that. Well, how much crazier it is to think that my son evolved by chance random processes. He's the most complex thing in the picture. Right. We're supposed to believe that everything couldn't have, but that thing did. And I was in a community college one time. I was promoting my next talk. It's called Who's Your Daddy? The Evolution Illusion. Guaranteed not to make a monkey out of you. And the free speech zone was in the middle of nowhere. I didn't have a kiosk, so I went and I ordered lunch and I taped it to my table. And I'm eating lunch and a woman comes up and we start talking about evolution. And I said, if you went out to your car and you popped the hood and you looked at that, would you think that engine came about by evolution? And she said, yeah. Science has evolved to make the engine. And I said, yeah, but was it non-directed, or was there an intelligence behind it? And she said, yeah, there was an intelligence behind it. See, that's a dead giveaway for intelligence. Multiple parts working together with precision timing and incredible fit for a purpose. And I said, guess what? Multiple parts, held up my hand, wiggled my fingers. Guess what? Multiple parts working together with precision timing for a purpose. That's a clear statement of intelligent design. And now we're going to look at what's inside our cell. I encourage you to go into YouTube on the Discovery Science News and watch this, won't you?
Cells are full of specialized components that perform functions vital to their existence. But how do these components get to the right locations inside the cell to perform their functions? For larger components, a transportation system is needed. Meet the kinesin. Masterpieces of microengineering, kinesins are miniature motorized machines that carry cargo from one part of the cell to another, walking along self-assembling highways called microtubules. No?
When I saw that, it's like, well, how do the microtubules know where to go? And my son saw that, and it's like, where do they get the energy to move? That brings us to ATP synthase.
It's been called one of the wonders of the molecular world, an amazing nanoscale machine. ATP synthase is a high-tech micromolecular power generator inside the cells of your body. It generates adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, an energy molecule that provides fuel that every one of your cells needs to function. Without this fuel, your cells will cease operation, and so will you.
And so my question is, how did we live before that evolved? And now look at this. Look at these. It's got a rotor, a stator, just like an electric motor.
The ATP synthase machine has many parts we recognize from human-designed technology. A rotor, a stator, a drive shaft, and other basic components of a rotary engine. The ATP synthase is one of thousands of elegantly designed molecular machines inside your cells that make your life and all known life possible. ATP synthase, an example of intelligent design.
Clearly intelligently designed. And yet the evolutionists have to close their eyes and just kind of, nope, that just looks designed. It's just a very inconsistent worldview. And this is, again, is that textbook. How are they going to explain life here? It says, the young earth was too hot for life. To the best of our knowledge, it says at the top. To the best of our knowledge. That should be said, to the best of our atheistic knowledge. There's other ideas that explain it a whole lot better than this. You know, there's tremendous heat on the earth, no oxygen, not yet protected from ozone layers. And then it says that it rained and it vaporized, hit the rocks. So it rained on the rock for millions of years. Okay, so that's how we come from the rock, according to their own textbooks. And then in the next paragraph, there's a real scientific word. I don't know if you can see it. Somehow, despite this harsh environment, living organisms appeared about 3.8 billion years ago. Somehow? You're putting somehow in a science book? Somehow? That's a fiction, man. That's a fairy tale. Somehow, all these reasons why it couldn't happen, and then somehow? And they throw this at creationists all the time. You know, then a miracle occurred. And the guy says, I think you should be more explicit here in step 2. Well, I'm throwing it right back at you, Mr. Evolutionist. Somehow? I think you should be a little more explicit there in paragraph 4. And here's a snapshot in time. This is the Gallup poll. And as you see the top line, that's the percentage of Americans. It's roughly around 40%, 40 to 47% for the last 30 years. That's the percentage of Americans that believe that God created man less than 10,000 years ago. The bottom line is man evolved over millions of years without God. And the middle line is a compromise. Man evolved over millions of years with God's help. But just notice that. You know, the top line, the creationists, we've stayed pretty steady. What's happening to the bottom line? It's doubled. That's alarming. This is when I want you to kick the door down. We can't let this trend continue. Godless societies in the past have killed a lot of people. Just look at Nazi Germany, Communist Russia, Communist China. And so we need to get busy. It's time for us to understand the past, because this isn't in the textbooks. Most of the who's who, the mental giants of science, were Bible-believing Christians. People like Pasteur and Newton and Kepler and Boyle and Faraday and Kelvin. What did they give us? Bacteriology and calculus and chemistry and computer science and electromagnetics and gas dynamics. These guys were brilliant, and they all believed in God and creation. They gave us things like the law of biogenesis, the electric generator, the electric motor, the law of gravity. Brilliant men. The Bible didn't hinder them. Actually, it helped them. This is Raymond Damadian. He's the inventor of the MRI.
Hi, my name is Dr. Raymond Damadian. I am a young Earth creation scientist and believe that God created the world in 6 24-hour days, just as recorded in the book of Genesis. By God's grace and the devoted prayers of my godly mother-in-law, I invented the MRI scanner in 1969. The idea that scientists who believe the Earth is 6,000 years old cannot do real science is simply wrong.
But you know what? He did not get the Nobel Peace Prize, or the Nobel Prize for the MRI. It's his MRI that's in the Smithsonian. It's called the Indomitable. He's got the first patent on the MRI. They could have gave it to 3 people, but they only gave it to 2. And they didn't give it to him because he was a creationist. What a scandal that is. And that's why I think it's increasing, is because they're silencing us. We need to get more people vocal, get more creation clubs, start talking about this, so we won't believe the lies that are being put out by our government, museum, and media, and education. And if you want to get up to speed really fast in an hour, 2 hours, watch Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. It looks like a junior high comedy, but it's not. People are getting fired because they don't bow down to evolution. It's a highly protected religion is what it is. And also, Jerry Bergman, he wrote this book, Slaughter the Dissidents. These are people that are losing their job, they're losing their grant funding, they're losing scholarships because they don't believe in evolution or they believe in creation. And if you go into rsr.org, you'll be able to listen to Jerry Bergman on a radio interview. And he's the MVP, I think, of the creation movement. He's got over 1,000 books and articles. Whenever I open up a creation journal, I'm surprised if he's not in it. That's how often he's in it. And typically he's there. There's another one by Jerry. And I was able to talk to him and say, how are you so prolific at writing? I said, do you sleep? And he goes, oh yeah, I sleep. But he says, keep in mind, when I was going through grad school, I was working full time. I had to make every minute count. And so he says if he's going to the dentist or eye doctor while he's waiting, he's going through his papers. His idle time, he's turning into gold. You know, we just let those 6 seconds go by, he doesn't. And he's just it's going to be interesting to see how many people he's influenced for the creation cause. And I'm going to end with this. George Washington Carver, born a slave, 1864. Was he a victim? Well, he didn't have the best of starts, but did that stop him? No. He became a scientist of international renown. And he was going to go testify at the Ways and Means Committee in Congress in Washington, D.C. about the peanut and its effect on the economy. He was supposed to have 10 minutes. He was so captivating, they gave him almost 2 hours. And the chairman says, Dr. Carver, how did you learn all these things? And he said, from an old book. He says, what old book? He said, the Bible. The guy said, does the Bible tell about peanuts? And he said, no, sir. It tells me about the God who made the peanut. And I asked him to show me what to do with the peanut. And he did. Just think if we had all the scientists and all the money we're investing in atheistic science, if those guys were asking God for advice and for input. Again, back to where we've started. Don't be absurd. Nobody made us. We evolved by chance from snowflake. And the questions that we need to ask, how do you know that? Has it ever been observed? Are you making any assumptions? And here's some killer ones. This one's they can't answer. This one will shut their mouth so they can hear the message. How did life begin? Where did matter come from? Very simple questions. They don't have any explanation. So I've just laid the foundation here for you. Your next step, I believe, is going to Solidify Your Faith's Facebook page and listen to the Get Equipped for Creation battle. I didn't get this on my YouTube yet. But this will give you some really good resources to start growing. It'll give you some 2 or 3 minute video clips. It'll like radiometric dating. It'll get you up to speed. You'll see where the assumptions are, or layers of rock, fossils. And if you have any questions, my email is solidifyyourfaith@hotmail.com. I'd like to help you grow.